you want to be in that 10 to 12 inches deep. 11 inches is perfect. So basically that is 2 inches past the center of the rim. So again, shooting consistently deep in the basket is key, and depth consistency, as we talked about earlier, is heavily correlated with shooting percentage and heavily correlated with the trajectory.
Welcome to another Coaching You podcast with the coach Brendan Suhr, presented by Noah Basketball. And 2 years ago, I had the honor when we were doing one of our clinics for the Alabama Association of Basketball Coaches. As we're ready to do our lunch break, I'm watching our guest, the CEO of Noah Basketball, John Carter, do his presentation to all the high school coaches in Alabama. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching this. And John, as I told you at that time I'd been coaching over 50 years. And I said, I am a complete dumbass. I have been screwing and teaching kids the wrong stuff for 50 plus years. And thank God the players didn't listen that much to me. But I said, I thought I knew, and I really studied shooting, but I found out I didn't know a whole hell of a lot. And at that point, it started our relationship. And it's just been incredible to watch and learn the science, and then watching you on numerous occasions teach at our clinics that we put on around the country, from Vegas to Ohio, Tennessee, Alabama, wherever we go, Florida. And, the way you have a way of presenting this and teaching this, it's one of my biggest concerns is that our coaches really don't know a whole hell of a lot about shooting. But I'm glad we met. I'm glad we've gotten partnership, because I think it's really helping the game, and I think it's really helping coaches. So I want you to tell a little bit about Noah and frankly, give a nice humble brag, as you do from Huntsville all the time, about Noah and what you've done with it. It's absolutely remarkable to me.
Sure. Well, I remember that meeting in Alabama very well. And I remember you saying, geez, I've been teaching this stuff the wrong way. And it was kind of funny, but listen, I appreciate the humility. We don't know what we don't know, at the end of the day, and you're not alone. I grew up going to clinics where I was always told to shoot it higher, more is better, etc. So there's, that's just part of it. But we've been around for over 20 years. We have had we won an award recently, the Small Business of the Year for the state of Alabama. And I told at that particular ceremony, so, sometimes everything lines up in your favor. You got the perfect tech, you got a perfect market, you got et cetera, and things just take off. I said, that is not the story of Noah Basketball. We had, spent well over a decade where I tell people all the time, people didn't really care about what we were doing. And so people didn't really like data early on, when you go back 10, 15 years ago. And so it was a little bit of a grind for us to get through to the other side. And a couple things happened. Number one is the product got better. Technology got better, as it does. And then what happened also, we had a kind of a generational change. We went from, keep in mind, the iPhone came out in, it seemed like it was '08 or something like that. And so, we started in the 04, 05 timeframe. And so now all of a sudden you've got people that grew up with technology in their pocket. And so they weren't scared of technology and they were open to it. And then, of course, we have this whole money ball approach to sports and then along the way as well, people, the three-pointer became key. And so you add all those things together. That's how we became, the de facto standard in basketball. And I say that humbly. I don't mean that from a bragging standpoint, but our data is used in, all kinds of different decision-making when it comes to basketball.
I think one of the things that absolutely fascinated me coming from the NBA world was when you told me privately, you said, virtually every NBA team uses it, and they use it as the NBA is so analytics driven now, as you know, working with them, is that they make decisions on players' contracts and everything based on numbers, and literally sometimes players are signed because of the numbers, mainly numbers of offense and shooting and things like that. But also, some players are signed almost can be signed based on what they've done in practice using your equipment, which is absolutely mind-boggling nowadays, you know?
Yeah, it's been, one thing that's been fun and exciting for us is just we are at the NBA as an example, or WNBA too for that matter. We go from the player development guy all the way to the top. I mean, we have NBA teams that have as many as 40 people that get our weekly reports. And that goes all the way up owners down to player development guys to assistant coaches to you name it. And so that's exciting for me that our data is actually getting reviewed and it's a part of the entire organization from top to bottom.
It's
Uh,
important. It's really important stuff. Yeah.
it absolutely is. There's no other way to grade how well a player is shooting the basketball and to look at are they overperforming or underperforming in games based on the data. And so yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It hasn't been a rose garden all the way, as I mentioned earlier. But it's fun to be where we are today. We feel like we bring a lot of value to the game, and the stuff we're going to get into here in a minute. This is the stuff that I love, the science of shooting. So looking forward to that.
Well, I really think it's important for the coaches and our listeners. The exciting part for Zach and I, and you know this, is that literally we have thousands and thousands of coaches listen to our podcast because they're free in 120 plus countries around the world. And for them to understand this and listen to this and all of a sudden hear someone, not a coach, say, hey, I coached Steph Curry and I really did a great job teaching him how to shoot. I wish I could tell you I'm the one that taught Isaiah Thomas and Joe Dumars and Vinnie Johnson how to shoot the ball. No, no, no. Okay. But this is, I think, so exciting now. So I want you to dive deep and tell us about the data that really makes the decisions. And for those of our listeners, this podcast, you're going to see all the charts and everything that John has on his presentation. But listen, you can go to our Coaching U Plus app, and for free, you'll be able to check this out. John's presentation, you'll be able to see all the charts. So I really want to emphasize, if you really want to learn, you're serious about the game and teaching it, this is an opportunity. It'll be the best thing you've ever seen for the game of shooting for yourself as a coach, like it was for me. So John, dig into the data and show our listeners how they can really understand Noah.
Yeah. So the three key things that we measure that are just super important. I mean, they're just they're just non-starters. You have to know these three things if you really want to evaluate a player and their shooting prowess, and also if you really want to know and understand what they need to do to maximize their shooting. And we studied this for a long, long time. We'll get in the weeds here in a minute, but basically the entry angle. So that's the way we define the arc of the shot, the angle of the balls that comes into the rim. One reason, by the way, that we measure entry angle is the launch angle is different for every player and every shot, depending on how far you are from the basket, depending on how tall you are, all those things. But the rim's obviously fixed. So the entry angle is that's important. Same for everyone. And then shot depth. We found that is just a huge, huge problem in basketball. People not getting the ball deep enough in the basket. All of this stuff about shooting only swishes is bad teaching. That's not being taught at the highest level of the game anymore. It's just not. And then left, right, everybody knows and understands that one. But basically, how am I shooting the ball? Am I getting it right down the center? Am I consistently left? Am I left from certain parts of the floor? And then another really key piece is how consistent am I in those metrics? And so once I know those things, then I really know what I need to work on. And so, if I have a shot depth problem, and my left right is good, there's no point in me spending my time on my shot mechanics of, keeping my elbow in and doing all these different things. And so we've had several situations where people were basically came back a little bit like you did when we first met, came back and said, "Hey, I'm ashamed to admit this, but now that we have the NOAA data, I've been working on the wrong thing with this player. Now that I see this, his left right is better than 70% of NBA players. Why do I want to mess with that? I need, the problem is his depth or is his arc, etc." So that those are the three things, and then just you need to track a little data over time. Going doing a single workout doesn't really get it done for you, and then of course you need the immediate feedback that we'll talk more about.
Well, let's dive in and let's go through the presentation here, and the numbers are absolutely staggering. Almost 1 billion shots by the end of this year, John. I know, and thank God you're not have to count them all yourself. My God, that is just incredible. I every time I think about it, I have to constantly say to Zach, "You're sure 1 billion freaking shots? 1 billion shots is so staggering, and something to really be proud of."
No, it's crazy when I think back about. I have to pinch myself a little bit when I think back where we were not too many years ago, where we were still kind of begging people to really adopt this, and now it's really taken off. And just to know that we collect millions of shots a week is just crazy.
Per week. That is okay, John. Let's just dig into the data and let's go.
Sure. Well, I'm gonna take everyone through take you into the weeds here a little bit and explain to you why this stuff is important, why it has become the de facto standard in shooting, why almost every NBA, WNBA team, and Division I colleges, and now we're moving heavily and quickly into the high school space. So I'm going to take you through the science of shooting, and I believe this will be a great resource for your listeners. So, title this "The Science of Shooting." So I'm going to start by just going with this one slide here. That basically this is the foundation of what we're going to talk about here. So when we introduced our three-dimensional product where we track all shots, we have rim maps, all those things. When we introduced that product in 2017, this is basically our cumulative number of shots we've tracked. And now we're well over 800 million at the end of 2025. We'll hit 1 billion shots in 2026, which will be a big celebration. And we have shots from little kids all the way up to NBA players, etc. So, but that is the foundation of the stuff I'm going to talk about here. I'm not a big opinion guy. I have opinions. You have opinions. We all have opinions. We know what it means and what the saying is there. But I don't operate in the opinion space very much. If I don't have the data to back up what I'm telling you and the research to back up what I'm telling you, I'm not going to share it. So anyway, so that's just some background information. So as we move on to the next slide here, I'm going to talk about three variables. These things are non-starters when it comes to shooting, and you have to have all three. You can't have one of the three, two of the three. You have to have all three of these variables if you really want to know and understand what a player needs to work on. So starting off, taking a look at arc. There's two things about arc here. The first bullet point here, everyone understands, and that is the space available for the ball to enter the rim, the space available for the ball to score. It's completely determined by the arc. If it comes in really flat, you're trying to shoehorn it in. If it comes in really steep, you got more space around the ball. The second point here is something that no one fully understood until we came into the picture and started collecting this data. And that is the only way to control the depth of the shot, the short long, is through your arc. And there is just not another way to do it. And so I'm going to show a few slides here that explains that. So, first off, Brendan, the thing that we found from testing so many players, and this being a coach so long, nobody shoots the same arc all the time. You can't shoot precisely the same arc every time. And so what I'm going to show here is an example. Here's a player shooting, it's a roughly 6-foot player. Ball's coming in the rim at 43 degrees. If the next time that player shoots a shot that comes in the rim at 44 degrees, same power, same everything, keep your eyes focused on the rim, you're going to see here that the ball barely moves. Then that same player shoots a 45, a 46, a 47, and then here's all of those shots. So there's a sweet spot in the mid-40s where you can have the best depth control. And you can see here, even though the arc has a little variation in it, the ball's going the same depth. And so, and what I'm when I say you can't shoot the same arc every time, basically what we've found is about the best a player can do is plus or minus 2 degrees. And so that's the reason we're doing 43 to 47 here. And so what happens is you're shooting higher. I'm not spending any time on shooting too flat. We all know that's bad. The rim closes up. You can't, you're just wedging it in. But when you get to the mid 40s, that's when you're maximizing the space and you're maximizing the control. That just the physics that we just talked about there quickly. So next I'm going to go to what happens when I shoot high. So we see this all the time, especially at the high school level, especially with female players. So if you have a 53-degree entry angle coming into the rim, 1 degree miss with exactly the same power, again, watch the rim, and the ball moves 3.5 inches. So then here's 55, 56, 57. So if I'm 55 at plus or minus 2 degrees, you have a spray effect that's happening at the rim that you will never overcome. I don't care how many shots you get up. I don't care how much you change your mechanics. If you shoot the ball this high, you will have a spray effect at the rim that you just cannot overcome. And so that was one of the first big discoveries when we started collecting this data. And I say this all the time. You guys have heard me say it. Shooting too high is just as bad as shooting too flat. And people in general don't understand that. Now, we've made a huge amount of progress, and people are starting to really get it now, and it's being enforced at the highest level of the game. But it was not understood before. And just so you know, it's the same story from 3. You can see the mid 40s there. You can see, at 50, I start having that spray effect. And then at 55, I'm just kind of done. And then here's just kind of a close up side by side. So you can see here, mid 40s, very tight pattern. I can control it. At 50, plus or minus 2 degrees, I start having that spray effect. And then at 55, I'm just spraying it short, long, and there's just not a lot I can do about it. And then, here's the make percentage by arc. This is based on hundreds of millions of shots. And you can see 45, it's clearly the peak. And you can see when I'm shooting too flat, every degree that I shoot flatter, my percentage drops off. And it's the same thing when I go up above 45. That physics problem, the loss of control starts to offset the gain in space. And so at that point, I'm just in a really tough place. I'd like to show this slide here, and then I'm going to stop and let you see if you have any questions about what we're talking about so far. But a few years ago, I did a high school shooting clinic, and then I was at an NBA team the next day, and we tested all the players on the high school team. We tested all the players on the NBA team. And then just so happened the next night, I did another high school shooting clinic, and I just kind of threw this graphic together. So this is 2 typical high school teams. And so these red dots was the average arc of each player. And so you can see here, the high school, it was all over the place. You had some in this 45, 43 to 47 ideal range here. And then you have some that was really flat. You had some that was really high. This is a typical high school team. That's the reason high schools, they get the most bang for the buck with this. And then you compare that. Here's an NBA team. And what do you see? Everything is right in that 45-degree range, plus or minus. You can see most of them are 44 to 46. These 2 right here, I remember the player I won't mention, but this was the same player. It's a very flat player. Outside of that, everybody's right there. Then up at another high school team, high, low, a few in the middle. This is just what happens. And so you're just fighting a battle you can't overcome. So just imagine if this is your high school team, and then you get everyone doing this, and you get everyone using the physics that we just talked about in your favor, more balls are going to drop.
So, John, one of the things that I find is that most people, most coaches, me included, we were concerned about our players just getting reps, just getting shots. But what they were doing was they were taking the wrong shots, bad shots, in essence, based on this data. Until we met 2 years ago, I had no idea this. How did you come upon this? How did you discover this, frankly?
Yeah, well, it started by, we had a guy way back in the beginning, Dr. Thomas Edwards. The old saying, you don't have to be a rocket scientist. Tom's a rocket scientist. This is a guy with an undergraduate Ivy League engineering degree, then the master's and PhD in aeronautics and astronautics from Stanford.
Wow.
And so he helped us in the very beginning to understand and more or less do some simulation. Then we actually built a machine that could actually shoot a basketball. And that machine we could program in high school variation, college variation, et cetera,
Wow.
and collected, 50, 75,000 shots there, along with a partnership with Jerry Krause, if you remember Jerry from Gonzaga. Um, and then lastly, we started collecting all this data. And so it wasn't of huge shock to us because of the early physics work that had been done with Tom and Alan Marty, and but it was all confirmed, which was great. The one thing I would say that we didn't hit in the very beginning, we knew all the great players we tested shot the ball deep in the basket, and that's what I'm going to talk about next is shot depth. But I mean that's the biggest cardinal sin in shooting a basketball is not getting the ball deep enough in the basket.
And that's what I taught wrong for only about 30 or 40 years. So I screwed the kids that played for me, because I was teaching aim for the very front of the rim. And you then showed me you're a dumbass, Brendan. Okay. So please talk about the depth. I was shocking when I learned that.
Yeah, the depth is really important, and the way we measure that is we measure it from the front of the rim. So if the center of the ball is going to go right even with the front of the rim, that's a 0. If it goes right center with the back of the rim, it's going to be an 18. So just so you know how we measure it. So you want to be in that 10 to 12 inches deep. 11 inches is perfect. So basically that is 2 inches past the center of the rim. So again, shooting consistently deep in the basket is key. And depth consistency, as we talked about earlier, is heavily correlated with shooting percentage and heavily correlated with the trajectory. So this is a slide I like to show. This is from an Orlando Summer League years ago. This is all the shots over 20 feet at this particular Summer League. And what you'll notice here, so here's the front of the rim, here's the back. Where does the ball score? So this black X, that's the center of the basket. So if you trust me that this area I'm circling here, that this is the scoring zone, why would you shoot it in the middle? That's not where it scores. So basically what you have, this egg area here, this is the swish zone. This is where the ball is going in and not touching anything. This area in the back part here, that's what we call a Brad shot. That stands for back rim and down. So I'm going to do this so if the top half of the ball hits the back of the rim, what's it going to do? It's going to go down. It's going to score. And so the great players have figured that out, that, hey, if I hit the back of the rim, it still counts as a 3, still counts as a 2 or whatever I'm shooting. There's no style points because it was a swish only. And so, getting the ball deep in the basket, the players that do that consistently, even they're not as good of a shooter as another player, maybe this other player's got more skill, whatever, but they shoot for a swish every time. So they only shoot 9 inches deep in the basket. And another player with less skill that shoots 11 inches deep in the basket, that player's probably going to make more shots. So that's really just a foundational piece of maximizing a player's shooting percentage is getting the ball deep in the basket, getting the ball to a point you do not want to swish every shot. You want a combination of swish and Brad shots to maximize. And then here's just the data behind it. Again, hundreds of millions of shots, and so you can see scoring percentage by depth, and you see 11. That's clearly the peak. And so if I'm averaging 11, I can be a little long, I can be a little short, and my percentage is still going to be really strong. Now, here's what we see a lot of, Brendan, at the high school level is players averaging right in here in this 8 to 9, and sometimes even less. So imagine if this is your average, okay, when you're a little long of that, that's great. That shot's going to go in. But imagine if you're averaging here and you're short, what's going to happen? Your percentage is like falling off a cliff at that point. So if you shoot, 6, literally it scores half as often. Now a six can swish and it looks great, but it barely cleared the front of the rim. And so that's really what we're trying to do here. We're trying to maximize the opportunity for the ball to score. And one thing we've found, by the way, at the college and pro level, it's pretty much identical. But at the college and pro level, those players miss short almost twice as often as they miss long. At the high school level, it's as much as 5 times. They
Wow.
miss short as much as 5 times more often than they miss long. It is an absolute percentage destroyer. Um, and so I can't really stress it enough. And then the other thing we found is, especially with younger players and with female players, if you're shooting too high, I can guarantee those 55-degree shooters we just talked about, they're averaging somewhere down in here. They're averaging in this 5-6 range is what we found.
Wow.
And it also increases their range substantially when they lower their arc to the mid 40s. So it's a double positive. They gain better control and they gain more range because all their power is not going up in the air.
So let me ask you this, because now as you're teaching this as a coach and really coach slash teacher, the importance of the person that's coaching or teaching the players how to shoot. If they're not knowledgeable of this, they're basically teaching the player incorrectly what he's doing. And so it's really important that coaches learn the proper science of coaching shot, which is the most practiced skill in the game of basketball.
No doubt. And, I quote our buddy Nick Nurse a lot. He said that, shooting is the most important skill in basketball, but it's the least understood.
Right.
I mean,
I
can you
totally
think of
agree.
another skill in another major sport where the most important skill is the least understood? I mean, that's bizarre to think about. So yeah, you're right. There's a lot of bad teaching out there. There's a lot of things that are, and again, and this gets back into the opinion side of things that I
Sure.
said at the beginning. What I do know beyond a shadow of a doubt is shooting the ball in the mid 40s and being consistent with your arc is foundational. You can't get there without it. Getting the ball deep in the basket, that's foundational. You can't get there without it as far as maximizing your shooting percentage. And then the last thing we want to talk about is the left right. And that one won't take quite as long, but basically what we do, no matter where you are on the floor, we dynamically measure. So we'll find the point on the rim closest to the player, and then we'll measure left right from where they stand, which is great. That lets you look at all your shots together. There was a pretty cool story on the Wall Street Journal did on Steph Curry, and they talked to his trainer and all of that. And they talked about how when Steph was doing these workouts, and he's shooting all kinds of, really complicated shots, and they're doing this and doing that before the shot and NBA threes. And I believe in this story, they talked about it's either ±2 or ±3. Like if he is not within 2 inches of perfectly straight, even for the shots during his workout, he just didn't count it. Like it was so they would have the system on left, right, which means if you shoot 3 inches to the right, the system would say 3. Or if it's 3 inches to the left, it would say -3. And so it just
Wow.
allows you to fine tune where you are. There's a lot of players that miss consistently to the left and they don't even know it or realize it. You don't know that until you collect the data and you see the graphics, the rim maps and things that we put together to make it obvious. So basically consistency is the key, just like throughout everything else we've talked about here. Here's again, lots of data, and you can see if you shoot it dead straight, that's where the most shots are going to score. And you can see also, we really promote the ±2. You can see here this ±2 inch area, not a huge amount of difference in the percentage, but it's a little bit like, we looked at the depth. When you get offline 3 or 4 inches, now it's like falling off a cliff. Your percentage is you're just gonna struggle. And so even though we don't profess to fix everyone's mechanics, that's quite a challenge, as as a lifetime basketball guy. But we have had some really good success. If you turn the feedback on and it's giving you left right feedback, just that extra focus can absolutely improve, even with poor mechanics. So it's just a foundational piece. And the reason I mentioned early on that you have to know all three is because basically you don't know which ones you need to work on. And the way we do it within our app, we give you splash percentages of where you are and more or less lays out a prescription of what would lead you to the quickest fix, the quickest improvement in shooting percentage. Is it my shot depth? Is it my arc? Is it my left, right, etc.
So the Noah basketball system is, in essence, a technology coach for the player.
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah. At the end of the day, we want to help the player. We're never going to replace coaches. That's not what we're trying to do. But we want to make the coaches better. And we want the coach to be able to enforce stuff when he can be with the player, but then have the player go get those reps and build that muscle memory when the coach can't be with him or her.
Nothing like the biggest problem I see is a lot of players develop bad habits when they're working on their own because there's no one there to help them or guide them. And I think this is one of those things that now takes you to that next level where there's, in essence, something that's giving you instant feedback. That's the thing that when I first saw it, every shot, instant feedback of what you're doing. And that really helps you get better.
Yeah, the instant feedback is, I mean, that's really at the end of the day what's the most important piece here. What we found from working with Stanford in the neuroscience department, a long time ago was two things about the feedback. Number one, it's got to be extremely accurate. Can't be close, can't be a little bit, can't be a good idea. That's basically what we've done as coaches all these years, as we've said, that's too flat, that's too high.
Hmm.
That feedback's not good enough. The player, the brain needs precise feedback. And then secondly, it's got to be immediate. If the feedback comes, a few seconds later, it's worthless. The brain's moved on to something else. And so what we're doing here, it's called proprioceptive training. We're giving our brain feedback on something, our central nervous system feedback on something it's never had before. And it's just incredible what the brain can do when you give it accurate, immediate feedback. And so that at the end of the day, that's what we're doing here.
I love it. Can you give a super quick review, John, on the three things again? Because, normal human brains like mine, we've already, and most of the people with ADHD, they've already said, oh, what did he talk about earlier? But I love these three things are so simple.
Sure. So basically, there's three numbers, 45, 11, 0. One thing we say a lot is shoot 45 steep and 11 deep. So I want it to come into the rim at 45 degrees. I want it to be 11 inches deep in the basket, and I want to shoot it straight. And so basically, what we're trying to do here is get the laws of physics to line up in my favor. And if I'm shooting with a 45-degree entry angle, and yes, I'm going to have variation in that, but if I'm averaging 45 and I'm doing that as consistent as I can, I'm going to make more shots. If I'm focused on getting the ball deep in the basket and I'm averaging 11 inches deep in the basket, or certainly at least within 10 to 12 inches deep in the basket, I'm again maximizing my chance of the basketball scoring. And then thirdly is the left right. The straighter I shoot the ball, the data shows it, and that one's actually easy for us intuition wise. Okay, I shoot it straight, it's going to score more. The arc and depth stuff is not as it's a little bit counterintuitive. We have to think outside the box a little bit to really get that. So basically, I want to be in the mid 40s on the arc. I want to be really consistent. I want to get the ball deep in the basket. I want to get more Brad shots. And then lastly, I want to shoot it straight. And that's basically what our system does. It's going to track all those things. It will give you immediate feedback. It's going to plot it for you within the app. You can see rim maps. You can see trending over time. You can track your games. There's all kinds of things you can do with that data to help your team shoot better.
So, John, as we're recording this, we're right in the middle of the NBA playoffs, and you virtually have every NBA team is using Noah. The thing, I started in the NBA 48 years ago this June, and we had nothing. We had no idea. It was just humans coaching humans, three coaches, if we're lucky, on a team. Now we have so many resources, so much technology in an NBA arena. The shooting is so much better than it ever was. It's not an accident that this is happening. And that's why 7 of the 8 Elite 8 teams in the NCAA tournament all use Noah, and all four Final Four teams were using it. But the biggest thing, the thing I'm most excited about is now this is available for everyone at the high school, small college level, JUCO level, anything. We now have the backboard system that can get that. Can you talk about that? I think it's a
Yeah,
difference maker.
that's been our goal for some time, Brendan, is to be able to get this in gyms all over the world and at every level. And honestly, when back when I showed that graph, when we really started doing this in 17, the original product, it's like all things with tech. It gets better, it gets less expensive over time. And early on, we had to put sensors up really high. We had to do things a little bit differently to make the tech work. But as expected, and this was our business plan from the beginning, is that we would start pushing into the high school space when the sensor tech got to a point that it was cheaper and less expensive. And that's basically what we've done with the backboard product. So now instead of getting lifts and getting in the ceiling and, and putting up a really expensive hardware, now we have a little small sensor that's about a little bigger than my thumb that you literally stick to the backboard. And then you've got a small box that you just take a couple of U-bolts and put it around your pole coming out of the ceiling, or there's ways to mount it to a stanchion as well. And you plug it up and you're done. It's that simple. So a typical, 30 minutes is not out of the question to do this. So it's really easy. The cost is just, it's just not what it used to be. You essentially have no installation costs, which is great. As long as you have access to a ladder and someone that can use a wrench, you can put this up really quickly. And it's just a much easier process. And so someone can get started, high school can get started for a little over $3,000. And we don't care how many teams use it. You can use boys team, girls team, youth league. Anybody has access to that gym. There's no extra fees for the app, for anything else. It's got a $1,500 per year annual service fee. And, you're up and going. And so it's simple to install, simple to use. And I couldn't be more excited about the high school market. We have a lot of customers in that space now. People are tracking their games. A lot of people are tracking their practices, but you can have a manager or a parent do your game tagging. It's easy and simple. And now you've got art data, you've got rim maps, you got shot charts by section, you got all that stuff available. You can look at it halftime, you look at it whenever you want. You're playing a team maybe for the third or fourth time that year, a local team, you can go back and look at the previous games and get all that type information and have it available immediately.
John, explain the word tagging. Tagging is a basketball term we use on defense for the roll guy in a pick and roll, but tagging with Noah is a totally different thing.
Yeah. So, so basically if someone is shooting and let's say you're playing a game, and so we've spent a lot of time on this app. So basically you can start a game and you just choose what roster is going to be participating in the game. And so I choose my home team. And if I'm playing a team for the first time, I'm going to say new team. I put in, this is Athens High School. And then I just tap the numbers of the players that are on that team. Boom, just like that, I'm ready to tag that game. And so when the next shot is taken, let's say, so the game starts, you click start and a shot's taken, the roster pops up automatically. Someone just taps the number of the player, and now that shot is tagged. It's tagged to that player.
Wow.
We've got every scenarios built into the app, like sometimes you have to delete a shot because the player was fouled on the shot. Our players take a shot after the whistle, as so often do. They get a warm-up shot in all the time. You can discard those shots. You make a mistake, you can go back and fix that mistake later. We've tagged just a huge number of games. We do some broadcast stuff, as you know, so we've used the app ourselves quite a bit. And it's just simple. And we were looking recently, we pulled a report to see how many teams tag games this year. We found a few teams that had tagged like 80 games. And it's like, how in the world did they tag 80 games? And so get back and I reach out to one of our sales guys. Hey, there's quite a few teams that's got a huge number of games. I know they didn't play that many games. And he said, no, it's because they're tagging their practice scrimmages.
Right.
They want to see who's getting shots and where when they're scrimmaging in practice.
So smart.
Yeah. So no, that's what I mean by tagging. So again, there's no extra fees for that. You're just kind of all in for that amount. You can tag your games. You can run as many sessions as you want, many teams as you want. And the way most people get it done is they share the cost between the boys and girls program and divide and conquer.
I was just going to say, and for whether it be for high school, small colleges, or whatever, with Title IX, it makes it perfect. It is such a great function for that, and really allows both teams, all the student athletes, to participate. I think it's one of the greatest innovations I've ever seen in the game from a technology standpoint, and one that I think the players to improve a skill like shooting to this degree, I never thought I'd see it ever, something like this. It's incredible, John.
Thank you. It's certainly changed. A quick story at the you're talking about in the old days of NBA didn't have anything. I mean, we really have changed that completely. No one has notepads anymore. No one has. When we first started, you would have people literally running around counting and writing down makes and misses and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. And but we ran in. I was actually not at our booth at the time at the Final Four, but Grady Dick's dad stopped by our booth at the Final Four this year. Our guys, I was at another meeting or something. I wasn't there, but they were talking about. He was talking about how much Grady loved the tech. And then another reporter with the Athletic told me that because Grady, if you remember, there was a story on him about how he growing up, he logged everything. He logged every time he shot, every time he was in the gym, how many shots he took, how many he made, all that kind of stuff. And then this reporter asked him if he still did that. He said, "Well, Noah does that now. I don't have to do it anymore."
That's awesome. Yeah.
Which is funny, but no, it's we're excited. We're excited that we're actually moving down to a level that and we've got the product to a point that that smaller colleges and high schools can afford it. So it's an exciting time. And we're now, we took our time with this. We're about to enter into finishing up our second year of selling the backboard product. And so we've now worked through every edge case scenario. The product's rock solid, and so it's ready to go.
One of the things that I found, on our podcasts and what our mission statement kind of is at Coaching You is to do anything we can do to help coaches. And if we can help coaches, they in turn will help players. And if we can help those two entities, we got a way better game. And that's what you've done. And my biggest thing right now is to get a call to action in the off season of coaches at every level to work on their game as coaches, but now help your players work on their game. So for coaches that we need to have them get in touch with Noah so that Noah can help solve your problem. Obviously you can go to coachingyoulive.com/Noah. We have everything in there. But John, what's the best way for them to get in touch with your staff right away?
Yeah, so a couple different ways. The quickest way to get to the right person is go to the website and just fill out one of the contact us forms. If you do that and you put in your state, it's going to get routed to the right sales guy. They're going to get back in touch with you ASAP. I promise you, we don't sit around. We're going to call you up quickly. So that's number one. You also can call the 888-TRY-NOAH, which I believe is 879-6624. You can get routed that way. And also, we do a webinar every single Monday, and we have people on that every week without fail. So you can go to the website, you can sign up for one of the webinars, and join, on a particular Monday, learn a little bit more about the product, etc. You also can just reach out. If you reach out through that, they'll do a private webinar just for you and your staff, or a Zoom type call. So that's the ways to get in touch with us. Now's the right time. Reach out to us. People are making their plans, for the off season, and we're stocked up and ready to go.
John, thank you. I tell you what, this is, in the last 2 years, is maybe the biggest learning thing, and I'm trying to every day get better. This to me was, I told you the first time we ever met, I felt I failed my players for years in that I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I thought I was really a super coach, but I didn't know what the hell I was doing till I met you. And so thank you for helping me. And then thank you for what you're doing for the game. It is incredible. And I love what you're doing. And I appreciate you, as always, sharing with our listeners of how they can get better.
No, excited to share with your followers, and certainly anybody has any questions, have them reach out. And again, Brendan, just thanks for the time.
I appreciate it. And until next week, this is the coach, Brendan Suhr.